Hi everyone. So we are back at the hotel after a wonderful day in Vieques, Puerto Rico. Got all the elements we needed for a story that is going to air in September. In fact, let me get the date for you. So it's going to air on CBS this morning in September. It's going to air the Saturday before the anniversary of Hurricane Maria. So it'll be September 15th. Saturday, September 15th on CBS this morning, Saturday. Can't wait to tell you about what we saw in Vieques. So Vieques is a place that many of you have been asking us to go for quite some time. And I had every intention of getting there sooner. Didn't work out, but today was the day. So I kind of want to give you the highlights. I'll save, the nuggets and the best of stuff for the piece, and then after the piece airs on television, then I will post several raw interviews here online. But let me just give you a little bit of what we saw. So our day started, we wanted to take the ferry from Fajardo over to Vieques, but it didn't work out because we also wanted to get dialysis patients that were coming from Vieques to the mainland, because they have to come to the mainland in order to get dialyzed, because there is no dialysis center on the island. So what we did was we found out there was a plane that was arriving in Ceiba, and from there the patients would be taken to a dialysis center, undergo dialysis, and then be sent back. So we thought, well, let's start the day. The earliest thing we can do is be at the airport in Ceiba. So sure enough, I think maybe around 7:45, plane shows up in Ceiba, 2 patients get off, there's a paramedic, and one of the patients is a gentleman who I interviewed who told us the story of what his life is like. He's been on dialysis for about 7 years, and 3 days a week he boards this private plane to the main island, and his morning starts at 3 a.m. because of where he lives on Vieques. He has to wake up at 3 a.m. in order to make it to the plane, to get to Ceiba on time. He gets dialyzed in, near Ceiba, and it takes till mid-afternoon, I'm told, and then he gets back on the plane and flies to Vieques. And he does this 3 days a week. I mean, it's like I told him, I was like, this is a full-time job. And he goes, yeah, and I've got a job at the library. So we wanted to highlight what many of you have pointed out to us as an urgent need, which is a dialysis facility in Vieques. It doesn't exist. And so what's having to be done because of it? People are having to be taken by plane to the Big Island. So we started our day there, and we couldn't get to Fajardo because I think the ferry was leaving around 11 o'clock, and as I'll tell you in a minute, it's not reliable. It runs late consistently. So we said, you know what? We're just going to charter a boat. We were looking at maybe flying by helicopter, but I didn't want to fly. So I said, let's do a boat. So the guys on my team were like, okay, great. So we went to Palmas del Mar and got on a boat, and it took us about an hour to get to Vieques, and it was a hell of a ride. If you've got Instagram, go look at my Instagram story, because it was choppy and it started to rain, and we went in the cabin at one point, and it was a hell of a ride. But it was also a lot of fun. Like, I'd be lying if I told you it wasn't fun. It was fun. I'm not used to being out on the open ocean like that. So we got to the island. It took us about an hour, maybe an hour and 5 minutes. Got off, and I was thinking, how do I want to do this story, right? How do I want to put this story together? Every time a journalist sits down to write, you can write a story 10 different ways, and people who are 10 times smarter and more talented than me might write it in a way that's better than the way that I want to. But the way I decided to do it was I love to involve you guys, right? And as soon as I said that we were going to Vieques, a lot of you said, go here, see this person, that kind of stuff. So when I got off the boat, I said to my producer, why don't we start with a lead from somebody? And sure enough, I saw one message here on Twitter from somebody who said, let me see if I can pull it up. Somebody messaged me and said, go talk to Betty. And Betty works at, what is that tweet? Oh, this is it. Yeah, so they said, please go see Betty at Vieques Car Rental if you can. She was a one-woman powerhouse during the recovery and will give you the unvarnished truth. So I was like, let's go see Betty. We got to go get a rental car, then let's go see Betty. So we got the rental car, and we drive up at Vieques rental car, and I walk inside, and sure enough, who's behind the counter? Betty. So, and Betty's been following our work for a long time. Betty, if you're watching, hi. So Betty gives us the lowdown. on everything she can think of at the time. What it was like to ride out the storm, how she helped aid groups that had come in, gave them essentially free cars, siphoned gas from this car to that car to fill it up so a group could have it. And Betty didn't hold back. Betty said things like, you know, couldn't find the mayor. She told me she found him at a bar at one point. It was like he was overwhelmed, locals said. Another woman said to me he was missing in action. Come to find out he was suspended and investigated, and legislators on the island are still looking into him. And I'll tell you what happened when we went to see the mayor. But anyway, back to Betty. So Betty dishes, right? And so the interview finishes, and I say to Betty, who would you want me to talk to? So she said, a guy named David Maldonado. So I said, do you mind taking us there? And she said no. So Betty gets in a Jeep. A lot of Jeeps on the island. Like most of the rental car companies have Jeeps. So Betty takes us just down the road, 3 minutes, and we go to a place which is an ATV shop that rents to tourists. And David's not there, but he comes back in like 15 minutes and gets out of the car, and he's as nice as Miss Betty. So David starts telling us, well, it becomes clear to me with what David's saying, that David was like a volunteer emergency manager. Truthfully. I mean, David was involved in meetings that the mayor would be involved in, like officials would be involved in. David was making calls to the president of the Bronx to have medication and supplies flown in by helicopter, and I mean it was amazing, right? I've told you guys, if you've been following our reporting, I have been consistently impressed. Dating back to Harvey of last year, I was consistently impressed with civilian Samaritans, and David Maldonado might be one of the chief civilian Samaritans on the island. So anyway, I said, David, what do I need to see? And he said, have you seen the hospital that's been condemned? I said, no. He said, come on. So we get in the car and we go to the hospital, and I mean, yeah, it's condemned. There's nothing there. It just looks kind of run down and shuttered, and it's got a wagon in the front of it, and grass has grown and hadn't been cut. And I said, why is it shut down? He said, well, there was mold inside, so they shut it down. So I said, okay. So I said, is there a hospital? And he goes, not really. We have a makeshift hospital, but he goes, if you have any kind of serious issue, you got to go to the main island. I said, well, what about if you have a heart attack? He goes, you better hope they get to you quickly. I said, and treat you? And he goes, maybe, but get you in a helicopter to the big island. I'm like, okay, all right. So he said, but let me show you where veterans go. So on the condemned hospital property to the right was a bus, like a big school bus that was customized. He said that's where veterans go if they need medical care. I mean, they can go to the makeshift hospital, but if they want to see a doctor for a doctor's appointment, that's where they have to go. So I said, really? And he said, yeah, but that's a step up. Because he said before the bus arrived, the guy who was taking care of veterans was working out of a car, a Ford Focus, I was told. So we talked to the man who's the administrator for the veterans who were coming to see a doctor, and his name is Reuben. And there was a nurse who was there. I said, well, how often is the doctor here? And he said, what did he say? Once a week, I think? Yeah, once a week. So we talked to Reuben, and he said, listen, I can't let you inside because, of privacy issues. You can call San Juan. And I said, nope, got what we needed. We're on our way. So we go to the makeshift hospital, and the makeshift hospital is actually in a building that was used as a shelter to house people in the immediate aftermath of the storm. So we meet with the woman who's the administrator, and she tells us a little bit, but she also says, I got to refer you to San Juan to make sure. And I said, nope, got everything we needed. We actually got video inside the hospital because as they were walking us to the administrator, we interviewed one doctor, and very, very simple place. Didn't see much equipment at all. Saw some doctors, but bare bones at best. And there was nobody in there. I didn't see one patient. So from there, David says, well, let me take you to City Hall. Or actually, we asked to go to City Hall. So he takes us, and when we get to City Hall, there was actually a funeral procession that was happening. And I had never seen this before. In front of the hearse was a woman driving a truck, and there was a giant speaker in the back flatbed. So the woman's driving with the speaker, which is playing some beautiful music. Then there was the hearse, and right behind the hearse was the immediate family that was walking and I was told the graveyard wasn't too far. But the immediate family was walking behind the hearse, and then behind the immediate family were the friends and others who were actually driving. And that happened right in front of the mayor's office. So we saw that, sort of reverently stood there and acknowledged the family as they passed, and then walked to the mayor's office where his assistant was standing there. And he said, "We've been expecting you guys. The mayor's going to come back." So I said, "Okay, great." So the mayor comes, we get invited into the office, and David, who had been helping us, says, he's talking to the mayor in Spanish, and the mayor says, "Listen, I don't want to do the interview in English. I don't feel comfortable." And I said, "Hey, whatever language you feel comfortable doing it in, that's what we should do it in." So David offers to help translate, and if David is watching this, he'll probably smile. But there were a few questions that I asked that the mayor did not like. And David didn't quite interpret exactly what I asked. And so the interview started with me finding out, what does the mayor need? And one thing he said was, I need money from FEMA. Now let me tell you how the process works. FEMA gives money to the central government, and the central government then gives the money to the municipality. The mayor of Vieques told me he has gotten roughly between $250,000 and $260,000, which I was very surprised to hear. Nearly a year after the storm, that's all you've gotten. So in front of the mayor, in his office, I called FEMA. FEMA told me, "David, as you know, we've given hundreds of millions of dollars to the government. What are they doing with it?" So I called the governor's office, and they said, "Well, let's check with the office that handles that." As of this live Periscope, I'm looking at the time. As of right now, I don't have a straight answer as to how much money Vieques has gotten, but I'm told I'm going to get it tomorrow. So anyway, we talk about that, and then I confront the mayor on the allegations from people that I had heard from people that the mayor was missing in action, so to speak, overwhelmed, sort of checked out, nowhere to be found. According to one woman, she says she spotted him at the bar. And so I confronted him on that, and I thought he was going to kick us out of his office. Twice, maybe 3 times. Didn't happen, but he was not happy with me. He said that's why he didn't like the American media. And look, if the mayor thought I was going in there to throw him softball questions, he was mistaken. I was professional, and I was very professional, but I needed the mayor to answer those questions. And he kept saying, that's in the past. I don't want to go into the past. Well, come to find out, the mayor was suspended. The mayor has since returned to work, but I got a call from a legislator tonight who said, "I'd like to talk to you about the mayor because there was a no confidence vote that we took about 2 weeks ago." So that's something that I'm still following up on. But at any rate, the mayor was, how should we say, none too happy with me. So the interview got back on track, so to speak. By the way, the mayor never answered the questions about, was he at the bar and all that kind of stuff. He essentially said, we were overwhelmed and we were busy, but I was there. And people have said the mayor was there, but there were times where he was there. I mean, there's a phone of him on the roof of City Hall on a satellite phone trying to get help. But there were other times people were like, he was just MIA. I mean, you just couldn't find him. So anyway, more to check on that. So we leave the mayor's office, and as we're leaving, David, who's the man that runs the ATV place, connects us with Mark Martin, who's an oceanographer, co-founder of Vieques Love, and an all-around seemingly great guy. And he takes us to a restaurant near the ferry because we wanted to get some video of the ferry. And I got to tell you, he gave us, it was a wonderful interview. And here's what I mean when I say wonderful interview. A wonderful interview, in my opinion, involves context and depth and candor and more facts than you want and raw emotion, and he brought it. He just said so much about what it was like then and what it is now and the struggles and everything. So I can't wait for you guys to hear from him. I can't wait to post his raw interview. But we had one more interview that we wanted to do beyond that, and we weren't able to do it because the weather changed, or the weather was changing, and so the captain called and said, "Listen, we got to leave in 30 minutes," and that was 2.5 hours before we wanted to leave. So we went straight from the restaurant. Mark actually drove us to the boat, and off we went. We did as much as we could today. We talked to as many people as we possibly could. And again, it was like a relay race, right? You know, you guys recommended me to Betty. Betty said, you need to talk to David. David said, I'll bring you to the mayor. And in the process, we got in touch. You know, people said, you got to talk to Mark Martin. And it was wonderful. It was a wonderful day. My team had a great time on the island, great time meeting people. And by the way, we also will have some information in the piece about the ferry. I talked to a couple that got off the ferry, and they were just lamenting the fact that, you know, the ferry is consistently late. The prices will be going up. It's unclear to everyone exactly what the prices will be. The customer service, there are complaints about that. A lot of people have some issues with that ferry. But we shot as much as we could. We literally got as much as we could before we got out of there and headed back to Palmas del Mar. So anyway, just wanted to kind of debrief on the day. Glad we got to Vieques and would love to go back as a tourist. That's it for now. Have a great night. We'll talk to you soon.